wanna be round a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
Hey, happy hump day. It's Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about. Maybe things that we really don't want to talk about, but it's going to be a good show. It's going to be a fun show. I'm your host, Sishi, and I know some of you have been here before, and so you probably recognize me. So welcome back. And those of you who are new here, we appreciate you joining. This is a new show called The Crimson Dynasty. This is about the third week so far, and so we're still pretty new, but we're a sister channel of the Bama Standard. So I know a lot of you tune into the Bama Standard, you're familiar with it, and even some of the faces. So we do have a special guest joining in about 15 minutes. So that's going to be a very interesting topic. I'll be sure to give an introduction for him once he's on. But I wanted to first give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Workspace Solutions. Now, this is a company where if you need a digital presence for your business or you need a full-fledged marketing team, they have what you need and they have affordable prices. So be sure to look them up online and actually reach out to them if you have any needs. So I wanted to kind of touch on a couple things that I've been hearing, and more so since, our game against Texas. Of course, there's been a lot of chatter and a lot of things that maybe we didn't necessarily want to hear. But I think it's worth, at least discussing more so from a high level perspective. And so one thing that I've been hearing a lot is Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. And there's been a lot of talk about, I wonder if Coach Saban retires, will Coach Prime take his spot? Will he be hired on as the head coach? And so there were a few things that I wanted to address in regards to that. And I think that, nothing can be 100% ruled out. I mean, we really don't know for sure, but we do know that Coach Saban has a really good relationship with Coach Prime. Of course, we've seen the commercials. We know they have a really good relationship to some degree. And I think one of the commonalities between Coach Saban and Coach Prime is that they share that same expectation of playing with a level of excellence. And that's what I like about them. I think Coach Prime, in his essence, he likes to win. He likes to win games. And I think he has that failure is not an option mentality that you really need to have, especially when you're coaching a D1 team, particularly in a conference like the SEC. I think that that's definitely needed. And so I think that, his style of coaching, his mentality, his mindset, I think it kind of falls in line with the Bama Standard, what we call the Bama Standard. So sometimes when, some of you all hear us, myself and other analysts on YouTube, or even, commentators with the different news channels, when we talk about the Bama Standard, I think that that's something that's kind of become cliche at this point. So I'm going to define that shortly. But I do think that from a strategic perspective, and even from an institutional perspective, I do think that Coach Prime, it would make some sense to have someone like him as our head coach if Saban were to retire in the next couple of years. I do think that with what he's doing out there, with what Coach Prime is doing out there at Colorado, I mean, he's really shaking things up, and I don't necessarily see him wanting to leave as quickly as he left Jackson State for a couple of reasons. But I did want to touch on the Bama Standard. I know that that's the overall name of this channel altogether, the Bama Standard. And like I mentioned, the Crimson Dynasty is basically a sister channel. But I think that we need to clearly define what that is. A lot of times we'll talk to players who were part of the national championship teams and guys, who played a few years ago, and they hit on that a lot about the Bama Standard, and it's to the point where we're trying to figure out where that breakdown is happening. Is it happening, more so on the recruiting level, where we're going out to these different, like let's say the West Coast or somewhere up north where, it may be a little different when you're recruiting guys who are from the state of Alabama, who they grew up watching Alabama football. Like it's just a part of tradition. And so I do think that when it comes to the Bama Standard, and at least for me, how I define it, I don't think that it's just a phrase. It's not just something to say. say. It's essentially arriving to practice early and staying late. It's working with the best of the best in your off season to improve your game. It's showing up for your teammates, holding each other accountable, and it's giving 110%. Because like I said, I think a week ago in our episode, I mentioned that every team that we play, regardless of the conference that they're in, regardless of how well they did last year, every single team that we play, they're going to play us like they're playing the national championship. And I think that sometimes, what we see transpire on the field, it kind of doesn't align with that. It doesn't align with what our expectations are. We've sat here week after week talking about, oh, well, our secondary is going to be a lot like the 2015, or our wide receiver core is going to be a lot like the 2019 group. But when you get out on that field and the lights are on and, you got 100,000 people screaming, it may look different than what we expected. So I think when we talk about the Bama standard and we start throwing out names for potential replacement coaches, we have to keep everything in perspective, as far as like having a winner's mentality, not playing with anxiety, stepping out on the field with confidence. I mean, to me, what I saw when we played Texas, it was pretty obvious that, we just kind of lacked confidence in certain areas. And honestly, we almost looked like a different team from the week before when we played MTSU. And for those who are in the comments right now, definitely leave your opinion there. Feel free to engage and just, comment if you feel the same. I know that MTSU is not a direct apples to apples comparison with Texas, but at the same time, it's not like MTSU was a horrible team. I mean, we saw they had a bowl game last year. They won their bowl game. I mean, they had a pretty good team. So it's just, figuring out what actually caused that breakdown. I think, there was a lot of hype around the Texas game. And to be honest, the hype started really even last year after we beat them, in Texas. I at least here where I live, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, you all should have lost to Texas, like you barely beat them, whatever they meant by that. I mean, to be honest, we didn't play our best in that game, but we still came out with a win. And so I think just, all the talk and all of the, emotion and everything regarding the Alabama-Texas matchup, it really started a year ago. And it's just been amplified as the months have passed. And I think when the Governor Abbott, made his comments earlier this year about Jalen Milroe not being a Bryce, I just think that we've been living rent free in the minds of a lot of these people who we probably don't even think about. But I do think that we should have taken the game more seriously when we did. There were certain players in our game against Texas who showed up at 100%, some of them a little more so than 100%, but it wasn't across the board. And I think that that's one of the areas where that breakdown happened. I think that over the summer, we would hear guys like JC Latham, Tyler Buchner, different guys talk about what we're gonna do, or, basically what they're seeing, when they're in practice or in fall camp. But we honestly, at this point, I'm tired of the talking. I think that because I'm more of an action person anyway. So I feel like if that's how you feel, if that's what it is, then let it be that when you touch that field, because it shouldn't look like a contradiction what we're seeing on the field versus what you're saying. And that's honestly what it looked like. It looked like we weren't prepared, but of course, it was a breakdown across all levels. I think it was a failure on all levels. I would say there were two groups that I think that did probably a little better, and putting that into perspective with the fact that we still lost the game, which I'll get into that later. But I do think that overall, in terms of, Coach Saban, and that seems to happen a lot. Like, I think after we lost to Tennessee last year and LSU last year, there was a lot of chatter about, well, Coach Saban should go ahead and retire. I think that people had thrown out Dabo Swinney's name a couple times too, the head coach at Clemson, and, him being a possible replacement for Coach Saban. I will say this. During the years that Coach Saban has been at Alabama, he's done more than pretty much any other coach. And I think he's even surpassed Paul Bear Bryant. And so I don't think that it's necessarily him. I think that we pretty much always, for the most part, have a good system around him. And so because of that, when we think about when we had Jeremy Pruitt as the DC, or Kirby Smart, or when we had, Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian on the offensive side. We've had really good coordinators too. And I think it's to the point where, we're having to we almost have to, in a way, clean house a little bit when it came to, moving past Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien. And that's fine for what it is. But I think because leadership starts at the top, we need to just keep that into perspective and just remember that, we do have to hold Coach Saban accountable, but I think the coordinators, it's a different level at this point, because we've taken a few losses and that goes against our standards. So I think putting that into perspective in terms of, Coach Prime, we've seen what he's done. I mean, when he got to Jackson State, as far as recruiting, how he was able to, have Travis Hunter follow him to Colorado. And I think we even lost a couple guys to the transfer portal who ended up at Colorado. I think DeMoy Kennedy and Jacquez Robinson. And so he does have some level of influence when it comes to recruiting, and you do need that. He did say that he's not necessarily interested in coaching on a professional level. And so I do think that he's going to stay at Colorado for a couple more years. And then I do think that he's going to maybe move on to a different conference. And that's why I think SEC is still on the platter for him in that regard. And so we do have our guest. Let's see if he's ready to join. Let's see, we'll give him a couple more minutes. But I do think it's worth noting that I think there's been over 70 players, at Colorado who's transferred out since Coach Prime has gotten to Colorado. So I think that, and that could be due to a number of factors. I mean, I think one thing to note is that Colorado didn't have a winning record at all last year. I think they only won like 1 or 2 games. And so when things like that happen, I do think that sometimes maybe the players, they could play down a little bit, or they may kind of get a little complacent, and maybe they just want to kind of stay on scholarship and things like that. And then you have someone like Coach Prime come in and he set the expectation and he tell them, hey, this is what it is and this is what it's going to be. Not everyone is going to be up to that challenge. And so I don't necessarily think it's a completely negative thing that many players have left, but I do think that it does speak to the fact that, sometimes you really do have to clean house. I see a comment from Willie Beeman. Deion Sanders has a reputation for rebuilding programs, not coming into ready-made situations. He should build his own legacy. Just my thoughts. Yeah, I agree. And I feel like that's kind of what he's going to do at, hi, Erica. That's kind of what he's going to do at Colorado. I mean, because when you really think about it, he really is starting from scratch. I mean, if he came into Alabama, I think especially considering our 2024 and 2025 recruiting classes, like if y'all were impressed with the 2023 class, just wait until you see the 2024 and 2025. I see a comment from the champion. I don't like fans being overly critical of Jalen Milroe, the O-line not getting enough blame for the Texas game. You've had Ty Simpson and Tyler Buchner be quarterback for that game. Alabama still lose. Yeah, and see, I think that's the tricky part there. I don't think that it was all on Jalen Milroe. I don't even think that wouldn't logically make sense to put the blame all on him. You don't fail just by one player. That doesn't even logically make sense. So I think people who are trying to shift all the blame onto him, maybe that's easier for them to do, or maybe because they don't fully understand the game and what they're looking at when they're watching the game. So I don't even think it's fair to fully blame Jalen Milroe. I do think that, I always think about something that one of my favorite speakers, Tony Robbins, says, if what you're doing isn't working, try something else. And I do think that at halftime, we should have made adjustments. For whatever reason, we didn't. And for whatever reason, they chose not to pull Milroe. And maybe they didn't feel like Tyler Buchner or, Ty Simpson were ready. We have to, assume that because they didn't make those changes. And so let's see, we have Chris Simmons. I think you can get the boys' minds right. They need to quit being on social media and worry about working hard on the field. Look, and Chris, don't have me going down that rabbit hole, because I say that all the time. Like, honestly, the last thing they should be worried about is posting on social media. Because for one, there's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of negativity. I think, and honestly, people can be so mean. Like some of the things that people say online, it's just, you have to have a heart at some point. Because at the end of the day, how many of us are actually getting out on that field and practicing with them in the heat? How many of us are actually getting out there and risking essentially our lives, because some of them really could get seriously injured like we see sometimes. So I think that was a really good point. And so it looks like we do have our guest here. Let's go ahead and add him in. Hey, Donnie, how you doing?
Doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's so good to have you here. So we do have Donnie Lee Jr. I know a lot of you recognize him. I did want to kind of highlight certain things about you because I think that what you're doing in the community is definitely worth mentioning. So just to give everyone kind of a quick overview of who you are. Donnie was a wide receiver. He was on our 2016 class. So he actually started track and field at Florida, and then he came to Bama, and he unfortunately tore his ACL. But you've been doing a lot in the community, and one of the things that I wanted to mention is the sports, the training facility that you have, the Lab USA, and I think that is so awesome what you're doing. I mean, I think it's the largest facility in West Alabama, and you've helped over 80 athletes, get scholarships to D1 schools, and you're offering like training and tutoring and ACT prep. I mean, it sounds like the all around, all encompassing thing that athletes need. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. God's definitely been at work.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell the audience, I guess, just a couple things, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but one of the things that I wanted to know from your perspective, like you're a wide receiver, you kind of watched how we performed last year, and then you see what we're doing so far. What's your take right now on our receivers, both the wide receivers, but also the tight ends?
For sure. And I've actually been really impressed with the wide receiver play. I think at that position, it's very important to kind of look at what they do, even when they don't get targets, because a lot of times you'll see guys get open even when they don't get the ball, but they're winning the route. And so I think that, our receiver play has been really, really good. Obviously, we want to get some consistency at the quarterback position so we can start building that camaraderie and that chemistry. But I'm excited about our receivers and the trajectory for this year. I know one of the big things that Jermaine Burton and Malik Benson both told me about last year is that they were shocked that none of the receivers went over 1,000 yards. And so that's a big goal for all of them, is to try to be more productive this year.
Right. And I agree with you on that. How do you feel about, I know one thing that I've been hearing a lot is our receivers being able to create that separation that's needed. Do you, when you're watching our games, especially this season so far, do you see that, or do you see that maybe it's something else that may be causing that?
I think as a receiver, your ultimate goal is to always get as much separation as possible. But I think one unique thing that NIL does and the transfer portal does is that it kind of democratizes college football. And so in the past, Alabama could line up any given Saturday, and you're going to get guys like Smitty are going to get 2 to 3 yards of separation, right? Guys like Waddle, things of that nature. But with NIL and the transfer portal, every team is competitive. We see that whether it's Texas, whether it's Colorado. There's a lot of new teams on the map that might have had success in the past that are finding that success again. And so our athletes they're getting separation. It might not be what we're used to in terms of, them just running free like when we had Tua back there. But it's week 2. It's still early in the season. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I think it's a little too early to make judgment so far. I am happy with what I'm seeing with Jermaine. I think that he's stepped up, and he's consistently stepped up, in comparison to last year. I think last year was a lot of, personally, I think it was more so the play calling. And I think that a lot of times, when you don't necessarily have the right system around the players, it can affect how they show up on the field. And so I think with what we're seeing with Jermaine Burton, I do feel like there's a different level of trust that he has with the coaching, but also with his team. And so you mentioned, the whole 1,000-yard receiver, because we have, in my opinion, we have a really good depth in terms of the wide receivers and the tight ends. Do you think that is actually feasible? Will we actually have 1,000-yard receiver? What do you think?
That's a tough question. I love the way Jermaine Burton answered that a few weeks ago, where he's like, man, he's not necessarily focused on the quantitative number of reaching 1,000, but just producing as much as he can. I do think that we're going to end up seeing Tyler Buchner taking over probably a lot earlier than later. I think that he'll get a significant amount of snaps this week. I know he's worked a lot of first team reps this past week of practice. And so I think once we figure out who the quarterback is, a lot of people, wanted to make it seem as if the Texas game was the end all be all. But I mean, anybody that knows Saban knows that position battle wasn't over yet. And so I think we'll see some more opportunities with Tyler Buchner out there to see if he can throw the ball a little better. Obviously, he and Tommy Rees have a little more chemistry because they have rapport together. Not to say that we just throw the towel in on Jalen Milroe. I think that he's an amazing athlete, but they all just have work to do. As a team, we got a lot of room to improve.
Yeah, yep, I agree. And I think we knew that coming in. I think they also made it clear as far as the coaching side of things that it would be, and I think Coach Saban said that it would be week to week in terms of just knowing who's going to start. And not just that, but the play calling as well, just trying to see the different schemes. Now, do you think that the coordinators being in that box, because I don't like that personally, I don't like that at all. But do you think that plays into how the players perform on the field?
I definitely think it does, and that's very subjective, right? So you get certain coordinators that like to be on the sideline so they can communicate with the players, and you get certain coaches that want to be in the box so they can process the game more cerebrally, right? They can see the entire chessboard, and so to each his own in that regard. I know me personally, like I enjoyed seeing our coordinators right there. So as soon as we gather up on the sideline, we can have that conversation. Hey, what did you see here? What did you see there? And then just having that confirmation at times when you're not feeling the best, we're like, man, like I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. But they've got offensive assistant coaches down there on it. They've got the receiving coach that will be down with them as well. And so I think, Coach Saban is great when it comes to making adjustments and adapting. And so I think that's what we're going to see him do in the near future.
And honestly, and that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. I wish that we would have seen some adjustments after halftime against the game. I mean, and I was just saying it before you joined, is that if what we're doing is not working, try something else. If what we're doing is working, keep doing it. So even the running game, and I could just go off on a tangent, but I'm sitting there looking like, y'all must be crazy. Like, you see, y'all got Texas acting a fool on us at home. Like, I wanted to run out on that field. I mean, I'm like, bro, and I'm like, look, my birthday was Friday, so I'm like, I hope we get a win. Like, it's gonna be the man. Like, I really felt
happy birthday, nonetheless, though.
No, thank you, I appreciate it. Like, I really felt some type of way because I know that we're better than that. I know that when you come to Alabama, you got to be good. It doesn't forget the number of stars, you're good. So I don't know if it's just nervousness when they get out there. I think a little bit with what I saw with Jalen Milroe was some nervousness, but also almost like a lack of confidence at times. And it could have been maybe the first interception that did that. But I'm curious from your perspective, do you feel like having those former players come back and either coach or have some type of influence on the team, do you think that has a positive influence? Like, do you think that really helps the new guys?
I think it's very subjective, so it depends on who you bring back, right? And so obviously Coach Saban recognized that we needed to do some re-engineering of the culture, so that's why he brought HaHa back. I've had the opportunity and the privilege to talk to HaHa a good bit over the last couple of weeks, and that's his biggest thing is just culture. Whether it's a Fortune 500 company or it's a college football program, everything is prefaced off of culture, the culture of that organization, and that's going to let you know whether that organization is going to succeed or fail. And so I don't necessarily look at Saturday as a loss. I look at it as a learning lesson. So we're learning how we can move forward. We're going to watch that film. I wish more Bama fans would take the Saban 24-hour approach to things. Whether you win or you lose, you've got 24 hours to cry about it or celebrate it before we've got to move on. But I think having guys like HaHa around definitely helps in terms of just instilling the culture. My biggest thing, and I've said this a lot publicly, talk to the players. I was at the academic call yesterday at Bryan and I got to chop it up with a couple of guys on the team, and man, just reiterated, hey, like, we're B-Side 5, we're connected from one generation to the next generation. Like, we're going to continue to hold you guys to this standard. It's not us versus you guys. It's not us trying to separate, when we were here, we were doing this. When we were there, we were doing this. And now y'all are doing that. It's a different day and age. None of us played during NIL, so we can't relate to that. So for me, it's big. Just we need to stay off social media and take our mentorship live and direct to the guys because they need us right now. Like, they don't need the B-Side 5, the older B-Side 5 guys just throwing more dirt on their names when everybody from ESPN to Bleacher Report is already doing that. I think this is an amazing time for us to come together as a fraternity and support our younger brothers and get them to lock in. You know, a lot of the stuff that the alumni are saying is spot on the nail. It's hitting it on the nail. I know Ruben came out. He's like, man, like if I had taken this loss, I'd be at home crying trying to figure it out, right? I know the freshman has gotten a lot of backlash about getting on social media and getting on his live immediately after the game. But unfortunate reality, but a reality nonetheless. College football is becoming the new NFL, and you will never see an NFL player sad after a game. I know a lot of fans don't like hearing that, but that's the reality of it. There's really no difference between a collegiate athlete now and a professional athlete. And so they are moving slightly more transactional, a lot more transactional. And so I think that it's just a matter of finding that balance between handling your business on and off the field, because if you don't win ball games, there is no NIL at the end of the day.
Yep. No, you touched on a lot of points that I, was planning. So I'm glad that you mentioned it. Now, social media, that's the thing that, and I hear a lot of people mention it. I get it because these guys are young and it's just what's popping right now. But I do feel like they need to, I think that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if you're jumping on, and if you're jumping on social media, I'm like, that game didn't piss you off because it pissed me off. Like, they should be madder than me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I didn't even want to post that night. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, if I feel like this and I feel like slapping somebody, y'all should be feeling like running through a brick wall. And it seems like that passion, like it's not, it feels like it's not there. And it feels like these guys are kind of looking at it more so like, okay, let me build my individual stats. But it's like, well, you ain't playing like a team if you're worried about your individual stats. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you agree with that?
No, 100%. Like you've got to do your 1 of 11, but it's got to be contributing to the 1 of 11. It's not the 1 of 1. And so I 100% agree with you. Where it seems like, again, this is not just at Alabama, because I think a lot of times Bama fans think that we're the only ones getting NIL deals, but Texas has NIL money as well, and they make a lot more NIL than a lot of our guys do, and they still came and punched us in the mouth. So I think utilizing NIL as the explanation for why our guys are playing soft isn't always accurate. Not to say that the University of Alabama hasn't been negatively impacted by that disproportionately. I think the transfer portal and the NIL was created to basically debilitate Alabama football. Like, I think after that 2020 national championship run, the powers that be got together and said, bro, we've got to find a way to stop this. And so NIL, again, is democratized college football, right? And so every athlete is moving a little more transactional and slightly more concerned about who they are as individuals. But let's just be real here. Everybody around that program is there for business. Everybody within that program is trying to figure out, how do I feed my family, from Coach Saban to the athletic directors to Coach Sarkisian at Texas. And so people get upset when the players are now being a little more focused on business. But I understand both sides of it, right? I'll always say that the better you play on the field, the more opportunities you're going to open yourself up to. But I think that's what we've got to get done. We've got to get back to, and our alumni have to come back and mentor these kids, like really heart to heart, have conversations with them and explain to them, hey, we can't do this, we can't do that, and moving it from there.
Yep. And it looks like we have some of the fans agreeing with you. I mean, you said it's spot on. If we don't win games, there is no NIL. Now you think about, a place like Texas. I mean, they got that oil money out there. So ain't no telling what they're offering guys out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a whole different level of money. But you moving based off of money, you're not really coming here for the right reasons. So that all that is relative. I see NFC boys. O-line was a dumpster fire, starting with the center. Yep. The team is very young. He wonders if the fire in their belly is their NIL portal and social media is destroyed. And NFC, that kind of, you're echoing what we're saying here. I agree with that sentiment. I do think that, because to me, that's where discipline comes in, right? When we're getting all these penalties, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So you see that you're undisciplined on the field. Of course, you're going to see that in other areas. You know what I'm saying? But I think that even as leaders on the field, certain leaders on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, they can go to these guys and say, look, man, let's take a little break from social media. We can still, because I understand, certain brand deals that they have, to some degree, they have to post. But sometimes it's like, if you sit up there and you we lost by more points in that one game than we lost combined last year against LSU and Tennessee at home. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was in that stadium, I couldn't even remember the last time that we were packed like that. I mean, the way that the fans showed up, all the money. I mean, you see people, like a lot of people, you know, spent time and effort and resources to get there to support the team. And you mean to tell me that after we sit up there and get beat by 10 points at home, we should have drove them. We should have escorted them out of the game after halftime. We should have made them not want to play this weekend and the rest of the season. We let, you know, Quinn throwing balls all around the field. He out there walking around looking fresh and clean, like he just came from the cleaners. We didn't sack him one time.
Come on. Where's the pressure at? Where is it at?
I guess they left it at, I don't know, they left it at Bryant Hall or something.
That's what I was trying to figure out. And I know I seen the video. Reggie commented on this, but I seen the video of Deontay just getting driven to the sideline, and you know, he looks at the ref, just asking for the call, right? And just like Reggie said, man, that broke my heart. And I know Deontay. I've known Deontay since he was in high school. He's a great football player, but an even better person. But I think we've got to learn to flip the switch. Like when I'm in this box, bro, you can't be nice out here. Like one of the reoccurring narratives that Coach Saban explained to us is that these people don't like you. Like they want you to lose. Like they want to see you down. I remember when we lost to Clemson in the national championship game, and we're jogging off the sideline, and you know, like it was a great football game. Deshaun Watson led his team. They did an amazing job, and I'm happy for them. Like, hey, man, like the better team won tonight. Like we didn't win. Let's, you know, get ready for next year. As we're jogging off the field and the confetti's falling, all of Clemson's fans were saying roll tears. They were more excited about us losing than Clemson winning. And that's not an anomaly to Clemson. That's a national thing. It's kind of like the Patriots in the league or the Warriors in the league, right? Where people have a winner's fatigue. And so I think, you know, just getting our guys to understand that every single weekend you show up, that team's going to try to punch you in the mouth. South Florida's going to do the exact same thing this weekend. They're going to fly, hey, this dog is hit. It's not who it used to be. That's what their coaches are telling them in the locker room. We can beat these guys too. And so, you know, they're going to have to lock in and really regather that competitive integrity.
Yep. I agree with you on that. I do see a comment, Bama Standard Network. It's been suggested that modern athletes are more motivated by NIL and getting to the NFL rather than winning games. How do you feel? Do you feel like that's the case?
I agree wholeheartedly, because 99% of kids that pick up a football do it so they can feed their kids or take care of their mom and dad. And so I understand what people are saying, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Every single one of us gets up and does something for money on a daily basis because it's a tool that we've got to use to pay our bills. And so as a football fan, I wholeheartedly get where we're coming from. But from someone that's seen the business side of this and understands how the owners think at the NFL, right? Everything is about ROI. If they're giving a guy a $90 million contract, it's because they expect to make $190 million off of him, right? And so we can't continue to tell the players, oh, just worry about ball. But the owners, the GMs in the NFL, the marketing departments at the colleges, they're all monetizing these games on Saturday. The University of Alabama makes about $1.2 million every home game. You think that the president of the university is boo-hooing about the fact we lost to Texas? Those tickets still sold. And so as a former player, yes, I'm hurt. But I also see the business side of it. And so I think we have to show a little more grace in terms of understanding that these are kids that typically a lot of times come from lower socioeconomic statuses. It's the first opportunity they've had to be able to provide for their families. And win or learn, I can't be upset with them for that.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And I honestly, I had a problem with it before the NIL, the fact that they didn't get paid, because I'm like, well, looking at their schedules, they don't necessarily have time to work a job, you know, and there are certain rules that are in place too in terms of NCAA and what they can and can't do in terms of, you know, working and getting money and things like that. So I didn't necessarily feel like it was right for, you know, the coaches, the institutions, everybody else making money off of the players, but it's the players that's actually out there getting the job done. So I definitely understand them getting compensated for what they're worth. I just don't think that it should be the focus, because at the end of the day, I think that the way, not just Alabama, but the way that teams play, like the physicality and just that hunger to want to win, but not just win, oh, well, let's just win this game this weekend. No, we had the national championship in mind. That was the goal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's different. Like for Texas, their goal is beating Alabama. For every team that we play, their goal is beating Alabama. That is their championship game. You know what I'm saying? But we're built different. And so I just feel like I feel like when you think that way, you see it on the field and you see it consistently 100%. On on the field, which is what exactly. So with everything in perspective, with how we played against Texas, with some of the the press conferences from Saban and seeing Tyler Buchner taking first team reps. What do you think? How do you see this game against USF going? Because people have to know that this new head coach that USF have, he was the offensive coordinator last year at Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? And I think he was the tight end coach as well. So we saw what they did. I mean, Jalen Hyatt, he ran circles around us, right?
Had a field day.
You see what I'm saying? So yeah. So we have to think that he's gonna, kind of structure certain things because he kind of knows how to beat us to some degree. So what do you envision happening in the game this weekend?
My hope and my prayer is that, just like you said, the athletes recognize that, all right, if I don't keep the main thing, nothing else is going to come to fruition. And so I hope that this early loss is really going to help just reframe their perspective, right? I hope that it allows them to know that, hey, if I don't execute right here, this is how this is going to go on moving forward, right? I had an opportunity, JC Latham and I chopped it up the Sunday after the game. And that's where his thought process is, right? It's like, all right, what's next? What can we do to improve, right? Obviously, we spend week 1 where the entire country talked about how big our offensive line is, and now week 2 is talking about how terrible our offensive line is, right? Those are the opportunities where you've got to really have faith in who you are and what your unit is, and have resiliency, because you don't have this brand where everybody's afraid of you anymore. Like, you're not just going to walk into a facility, walk into a stadium, and people lay down. That's not going to take place. We had that brand when we were in school, and like Bo has talked about this before, right? There was tradition that came in even before we started, and so getting them to carry on that tradition of toughness, effort, commitment, discipline. One of my favorite quotes by Coach Saban before we go out into the field, man, lock the gate. Just cut and dry. I'll leave out some of the other words he added with that sentence, but lock the gate. And so in that format, like, we've got 4 quarters, make them quit. Saban says it all the time, bro. And I want to see that. Like, now I think it's become this hateful competitor is really just a saying now, right? Or like this joyless murder ball is just a saying now. We never said that when we were in college. It's just what it was. They branded it and came up with it, right? Come on, we never talked about it. And you hit that on the nail earlier, where you're like, if they focus on the main things, everything else takes care of itself, right? Coach Promise said this before: if you look good, you feel good, you feel good, you play good, they pay good, right? You got to play well first before you get some NIL opportunities. So to answer your question, I'm hoping again to see that competitive integrity reinstilled this weekend. I'm excited to see our boys go to battle. Always proud to be a member of B-Side 5. And I think that this younger B-Side 5 group is going to make the older B-Side 5 group proud after this weekend.
I think so too. So if you had to give a score prediction, what would you say?
I don't usually do score predictions, but I'll say Alabama a lot, South a little. That's
okay.
That's not fair.
Okay. No, I feel you on that, because honestly, after last weekend, I'm just like, you know what? I don't even want to throw out no numbers. I'm gonna just pray that we do our best, and we gotta. Now we're gonna have an angry Bama team, and I think one thing that people have to realize too, after we play USF, we have 7 SEC games after that.
Come on.
I mean, this is it. You know what I'm saying?
It's gonna get real.
It's been real. I think the game against Texas, like you said, the fact that it was an earlier loss, that was actually, to me, it's kind of like more of an opportunity. Of course, you don't want to lose, but it's an opportunity because you get to see the holes versus a later loss where it's a little too late to make adjustments. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like we can, if we, on every aspect, every level, the coaches, the players, everyone, if we do what we need to do, we're going to be making those adjustments this week, and we're going to see it against USF, and we're going to see it when we play Ole Miss at home and every other game that follows. So, I mean, I'm excited, but like you said, y'all didn't have to talk about joyless murder ball. That's just what it was. We need to stop doing all that talking, because it's now it looks like we're contradicting ourselves. We're saying all this stuff, but we ain't exactly. We barking, but we ain't biting. I'd rather see the biting. I don't want to hear the barking, because at this point it's just noise. So I don't know. But who do you think are going to be, I guess from an offensive perspective, who do you think are going to be, I guess, the standout players of the game this weekend?
I think from an offensive side, I think Malik Benson will finally come out this weekend. I've been really high on Malik's ability, and specifically his work ethic, since he came to Bama from JUCO. I think a lot of teams recognize the success that Jermaine has had in the past 2 games. as well as Isaiah Bond. So I think that we'll see a lot more brackets and attention going their way, which hopefully opens up some balls for Malik. So yeah, I think our receiving core will do really well. The thing that I have questions for that I'm excited to see is on the defensive side, because obviously our secondary, we had some issues. Front
Mhm.
seven's got to get some more pressure. I'll be interested to see if they rotate some of those younger freshman DBs that we've been hearing about. Your Jake
Mhm.
Popes. Obviously, I've got a close relationship with T. Mitch, so I'm hoping and praying to see him on the field. But I just want to see who's ready to fight, man. Who's ready to compete? That's the biggest thing that I'm looking for this weekend. Is not even the scoreboard, but how are y'all gonna shake back? Somebody just punch you in the mouth at your mama's house. What you gonna do about it? Like
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. And so I do think, to answer your question, I think Malik Benson will have his coming out party, and I think that a lot of the questions that we have about Tyler Buchner will be answered this weekend.
I think so too, and I think that that's what we need, going into this SEC in conference stretch of games. Now, and I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know that Terrion Arnold, to me, he was one of the only guys in the game against Texas that played physical, and he was physical the whole night. Now, technically, he did get that. I think it was a pass interference call,
Mm-hmm.
but honestly, it wasn't one that I was mad at. So how do you feel so far with Terrion as far as what he's shown you, and then what he potentially has, coming going forward?
Man, I think one of the things that it's an unfortunate reality that you're not able to see it while they're on the field. But
Mhm.
Terrion Arnold is probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life, on and off the field. So his cerebral processing skills are unmatched as a DB. He's been trained by Christian Rochelle, which is one of my good friends, who's also worked with Pat Surtain, Levi Wallace. And so you can kind of tell that Terrion is of that mold in terms of, yes, he has the physical stature to run with anybody, but he's processing the game mentally and cerebrally as well. I think, excuse me, I think with a lot of those PIs and flags that Terrion got, he was in position, and so I want to be able to see him do the same exact thing this upcoming week. Excuse me, I'm sorry, but being able
Mhm.
to see him in position, staying in phase, and trusting himself. So last week he'd be in phase and he kind of panic a little bit at the end and he get a little handsy. You don't need to do that, right? You're already in position. Terrion's a leader on that team. They look at him in terms of when he's up, they're going to be up. If he's down, they're going to be down. Similar with a guy like J.C. Latham, right? But I think we're going to see Terrion be a lot less handsy, and I don't think you'll see any calls on him this weekend.
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing from him so far, and I feel like he's going to be one of the guys that's going to be consistent. Willie says, I like Tyrion because he's very aggressive. Just limit some of the holding penalties. He'll be all right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. Well, before you go, Donnie, do you want to kind of give the fans a overview of the lab and what it is, what you got to offer, and where you see it going in the near future?
For sure, for sure. So if you guys want to follow us, it's at the Lab USA on social media. My personal is at Donnie Lee Jr. So yeah, we're essentially just working with youth athletes, trying to get them to the next level. The next level not always being college ball or NFL, but whatever the next level is for them individually. Uh, Everything in our program is prefaced off of Coach Saban's process in terms of the academic tutoring, the ACT prep. We try to work with our athletes in terms of sports psychology and things of that nature as well, and just recognizing that football is just a microcosm of life. And like you've said a myriad of times tonight, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So
Mhm.
if we can start kind of brainwashing and indoctrinating these kids at a young age to understand the importance of a process, that's what we're working on. From a community service perspective, and where people that they're looking to help out could help. So I also have the Ivy Foundation, my 501c3, and so we've partnered the city of Tuscaloosa and the Tuscaloosa Police Department to initiate something called the positive ticketing system, where school resource officers, whenever they see a kid doing something positive at the school, they'll write them a ticket, a citation, and then they're able to take that ticket to a restaurant, to a bowling alley, to the movie theaters, and do that from there. And so, and I hope to improve community relations with local law enforcement. So, like we always talk about, it's bigger than ball. I tell this all the time. I was arrested and kicked off the football team when I was at Alabama, and that was one of the worst moments of my life. And so I'm at a point in my life now where I've learned from that mistake, and I want to continue to teach from that mistake. And that's how we're doing it. So anybody that wants to support, like I said, at the Lab USA, my personal is Donnie Lee Jr. Hit me up, man. Roll Tide.
Real time. Well, I really appreciate that, Donnie. I think what you're doing in the community is amazing, and like you said, at the end of the day, you have to realize that it's bigger than you. It's bigger than Alabama. What you do, the talent, how you show up on the field, what you're doing, is so much bigger than you. And giving back to the community, that's what it's really all about. I think that what you're doing, I mean, to me, that could be it could get big. It could be something where you have it, in different parts of the U.S. It could be a national thing as far as the Ivy Foundation, the lab. So I wish you the best with that. I'm sure it's just going to get better and better, honestly.
Likewise,
Yeah.
likewise. I appreciate the support.
Yeah. I see Willie. He said, thank you, Donnie Lee Jr. Really appreciate you working with the star players of now and tomorrow. So you have a lot of supporters, man. I mean, people really rocking with you. Now, someone asked, do you work with
Appreciate it.
baseball players?
So I do not specifically work with the baseball guys, but we've got a couple of Alabama baseball players that work with them. So feel free to reach out and I'll get you connected with those trainers and then we'll take it from there.
And where exactly is the lab located for those who may want to know?
It's 1924 13th Street East, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you guys
Right.
DM me, I'll send that over for sure.
Awesome. And people can reach out to you directly on social media to figure out how to get their kids involved and all that good stuff.
Yes, ma'am. I'm touchable. That's one of the things I took pride in when I was in college. I was like, I'm not one of those guys where if you DM them, they'll never respond. Like I try to interact with the people that support me and pay it forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love the character is everything. Character will take you where money can never take you. So
Amen.
I love to see it, man. Well, thank you so much. It's been a blessing to have you here. I love what you're doing. I'm definitely gonna have to have you back on soon.
Let's do it. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's get it. Well, you have a good night, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yes, ma'am. Roll Tide. Thank you for having me.
Roll Tide. All right. Well, y'all heard it from Donnie. I mean, he said it all. He ain't leave no money on the table. So I mean, and that's the thing that I try to talk a lot about and I try to hone in on a lot is character. And I think that, for instance, what Donnie is doing, it's like you're letting your work and your character speak for you. And I think that, forgetting NIL, because money can't buy character, but character can make you any amount of money. So I think that when you keep all of that in perspective, you move differently. And that's why I want to see our guys. Nothing is wrong with social media. It's a tool, right? And when you have NIL deals, you do have to, promote it. So I know how that works, but I do think that we had 10 penalties. I think it was 10 penalties against Texas. And I'm literally in the stadium looking around. I'm literally doing a 360 around me. Like, I know y'all lying. We literally just had 2 penalties against MTSU and we come out there at home with 10. We need to shape up. We need to get together. 10 penalties for 90 yards. That's what I'm saying. I think it was 2 of those penalties where Texas got a touchdown. Just imagine how much money we left on the table. I mean, you talk about NILs. This is a whole different level of money. So we need to shape up. I would charge the players who are watching right now, just stop with the talking. I like it. I like to hear the guys, talk about what they're going to do and this and that. It feels good. But at this point, I think that we need to stop with the talking and we just need to show some action. We need to get out there. We need to dominate USF at home. And this SEC stretch that we have after that, the 7 games, I think we have a bye week either before or after, I think before LSU, but the 7 SEC games stretch that we have after USF, this weekend is going to be very pivotal. I think that we will see, of course, we're going to see Jalen Milroe out there, but I do think we're going to see Tyler Buchner. We may even see Ty Simpson. We just don't know, but I do know that Tyler Buchner did get some first team reps, this week. And so I do think that we're going to see them kind of rotate in and out. I like what Coach Saban said in his press conference after the game against Texas. He said that our game against Texas was a test for us, for the players, but also for the coaches. And so I like that he used that word. He said that it was the midterm. It wasn't the final. And that's so true. Now, technically, I think the last time we lost a game early in the season was a few years ago, but we have to, kind of put that into perspective and just think about, okay, well, we already know we have new coordinators. We have a lot of young guys and they're trying different schemes. I think that's one of the reasons why they were in the box, which, I despise the box, but I do think that they wanted more of a bird's eye view of, just what they were seeing and what, maybe what type of changes to make going forward. So I think we'll see things kind of play out a little better this weekend. I do think that, Coach Saban, he said something very powerful. He said that we have two choices. We can either throw in the towel and play mediocre, or we can actually step up to the plate and fight and grind it out and do what we need to do to be successful. We don't want to waste this opportunity. Instead of looking at it as a loss, we can look at it as an opportunity and think, okay, well, you know what? Like, yeah, I could have, the O lineman, like, yeah, I could have done this, I could have done that. I think a couple times when Seth snapped the ball really low, at least from what I saw, it wasn't necessarily because of him per se. It was more so him having to block. I think when they had Dalcourt at guard, I want to say, I think it was when he was just trying to kind of like overcompensating when it was coming to blocking or whatever. So I think that was one of the reasons why we saw a couple of the lower snaps, because even Saban said in the press conference, he hasn't seen that in practice. So that kind of surprised him. So I think that we should see that cleaned up a little more. And, I think we have some good things to look forward to. Now, before we close, I do want to talk a little bit about our game against USF. Now, I mentioned when Donnie was on that the new head coach, now he's new, this year, he's just got there this year, the new head coach for USF, he was the offensive coordinator last year for Tennessee, but he was also the tight end coach. And I think his name is Alex Golish. And so he actually won a couple of awards last year for offensive coach of the year. And so I think that, that speaks volumes. And because of that, we should expect USF to come out there, guns blazing. I mean, like I said, every team that we play, whether we play them at home or at their turf, they're gonna try to win, and they're gonna play at 100%. So we just need to be expectant of that. I do think that USF, they did lose quite a bit of guys who were impact players last year, but they do still have a few that I personally think that we need to watch out for. Their quarterback Byron Brown. Now, he didn't start last year. He did play a little bit last year, but he didn't start last year. He played this year though, and what I noticed is that this is a quarterback who loves to run. Like, he actually, I think the last couple of games just in this season alone, he's had, I think, almost 200 yards himself. Rushing yards. He has more rushing yards than their running backs. And so I think that we should expect to see him running the ball a lot. And I think that our defense needs to apply pressure all night on him. We need to sack him a few times. We can't let him use his legs. We need to force him to throw the ball, so that our secondary, which we know is elite, they need to play up to that so that they can, get the job done for us. So that's one thing that I see, them throwing the ball or them running the ball a lot. But they do have a couple good running backs. I think Naquan Wright and Michael Dukes, I believe, both of them are seniors. So they do have some experience. So I think if Byram isn't running the ball, I think he may, hand it off to one of those two. I also believe that they're the two running backs, they're really good with their hands. I think their previous game against FAMU, they were, passing the ball. He was passing the ball off to the running backs. So we need to be looking out for that too, because if he doesn't necessarily feel comfortable, passing the ball to the receivers, which if I were him, I wouldn't, then I do see him making those shorter passes to the running backs. I see him running the ball, getting some yards. And so I think we just need to apply a lot of pressure up front. We need to blitz. We need to cover. It's a lot that we can do, that I know we can do. We didn't really see it a lot in the game against Texas, but I think if we do what needs to be done, we'll take care of that. Now, as far as their passing game, they do have a few wide receivers that I think we need to at least, make sure that we cover. They have a guy, Caffrey Brown, I believe he's the junior. A lot of their impact players are, either juniors or seniors. So they do have experience out there on the field. This season alone, he's already gotten a little over 100 yards. He's about, 6 feet tall. And so I think because of that, we need to make sure that we, line them up accordingly with our DBs. And so Caffrey Brown, Sean Atkins, he's another guy that we need to watch out for. I see defensive end USF. Jason Vaughn is a stud. Our offensive line better buckle up. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I say, no matter who we're playing, we need to know that every single guy, these guys are on scholarship, and for a reason. And so we need to expect them to bring their A game. If, like I say, if they're playing at 100%, which they will be, like Texas did, all of our players need to be playing at 110%. So their receivers, Caffrey Brown, Sean Atkins. I think they have another receiver, Naeem Simmons. He's another guy, junior. He had, I think, almost 800 yards last year. Now, the reason why to me that's important is because I think the 2021 season, he only had a little over 200. So you mean to tell me that he triples in numbers just in a year? I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of yards this year, especially as Byram gets more experience out there in his passing game. So I definitely think that we need to be covering Naeem. I think their tight end, they have a tight end out there, Jason Littlefoot or Littlejohn. He's a senior. So a lot of the impact guys, they do have experience. So I think if we can lock down, if we can cover those receivers and stop their running game. We need to be blitzing them. We need to be sacking their quarterback. I think that we'll be successful. I think that we'll get them to bow out early, and I think that we'll tire out their defense. As the comment that we just saw, their defense, they have a pretty good defense. I think that their line is pretty good. BJ Gordon, they have Andrew Matafa, Jalen Schuler, Jonathan Ross. So they have a pretty good defense for the most part. And then I think their secondary is pretty good as well. They have some good cornerbacks with experience, mostly sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Daquan Evans, Jalen Stokes, Braxton Clark. It's a few guys, and their safeties, Amaris Brown, Logan Berryhill. So they have a few guys that I think when it comes to our defense, we can lock it down. We can shut them down. We need to tire them out. We need to sack the quarterback. We need to force them to play their second string, who hasn't gotten much playing time this year or last year. And then I think from an offensive perspective, I think that this is going to be the game where we really get to see who's going to get more playing time on the field, whether that's Jalen Milroe. I do think he's going to start, but I do think that we're going to see Tyler Buchner out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ty Simpson or Dylan Lonergan. I'm a big fan of Dylan Lonergan. I think he's going to be another Mac Jones. I think that we're going to see him do really well whenever his number is called. And so we have a lot of opportunity. I think that our wide receivers, we're going to be able to see them in action this weekend. I think we're going to do, a good amount of passing. I don't know why when we played Texas last week, the only running backs that Jalen Milroe had more rushing yards than Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams. Like, that actually pissed me off. And I'm trying to figure out from a coaching perspective, it's not enough to call plays. You need to know who needs to be in the game and when. So you mean to tell me that we have a 5-star running back, Justice Haynes? He didn't touch that field against Texas. That makes no sense. I don't think Richard Young didn't touch the field last week. And I think Jam Miller, he maybe had 1 or 2 carries. So I want to see, even from a coaching perspective, things need to be done. We have some changes to make, and I didn't see a lot of creativity as well against Texas. And so that was something that stood out to me: a lack of creativity, a lack of pressure, a lack of toughness, a lack of physicality. And I personally, I feel like we better not see that again. Like, if I'm gonna make that trip to Tuscaloosa to sit in that stadium and cheer on our guys, we need to be playing at 110% across the board. Those coaches, they need to be on that field. It's no excuses at that point. We need to be playing these guys. We need to be seeing Malik Benson getting more carries out there. I want to see those tight ends. I want to see CJ Dupree out there a little bit more, not just blocking, but getting his hands on the ball. I want to see Jake Pope. I don't know why he wasn't out there last week. When I looked at just the list of guys who played last week, I don't think I really saw many freshmen at all. And I said a few weeks ago that the key to us winning out this season is going to be having more of those freshmen out there, more of those transfer guys. We need them on the field. The James Smith, the Yanze Pierres, the Quay Rousseaus, the Tony Mitchells, all these guys. Caleb Downs, of course, he's going to continue to start. But we have too much talent to sit up there and act like we don't know how to coach and how to use them, because at that point, it's a coaching problem. It's not even an issue with the players. So I think that we need to, the coaches. Look, Kevin Steele and Tommy Reese, y'all are on some thin lines, because Tommy Reese kind of was out there looking like Bill O'Brien last week, and then we're not having that. So we need to get more creative. I was at an event Friday, the day before the game against Texas, where Tommy Reese and Coach Saban spoke, and I was pleased with what they said. They sound confident, with what we had, and it sounded like we were ready to play Texas, but I just don't know, where things kind of fell apart. But I think that it was definitely an opportunity to show us areas that we need to work in. So, just to kind of close, I think that we're going to do well against USF. I think our players are mad, and rightfully so. I think that we're going to see, the guys step up a little more, and, I think we're going to dominate. So at this point, I think as far as the score prediction, I do feel like maybe we'll allow them 1 touchdown. if they get two, it's by accident. Maybe it's by, a mishap on our side. But I see us easily, 42-ish, 45, 49. I definitely see us kind of fixing some of those issues that we had. But we are definitely coming towards the closing of this show. It was great having Donnie on. I love to hear him speak. I love what he's doing in the community. I think that people can take note, male and female, we can all take note with what he's doing in the community and just how he's giving back. I think that that's one of those, that's a character trait that a lot of us need to inhabit. And so I really appreciate everyone who's been active in the comments. Definitely come back and replay the video, and feel free to leave comments, beneath the video, share the video, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are looking for me on social media, I'm more active on Instagram. It's at beauty_of_intelligence. So you'll find me there. And without further ado, we can definitely plan to meet again next Wednesday. I'm sure we'll have some stuff to talk about, hopefully mostly positive next week after we dominate USF. But I hope everyone has a blessed night, and thank you for joining, and we'll meet again soon. Thank you.